Good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I am your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on this lovely Friday evening in Pittsburgh. And as I always say, wherever you are in Steeler Nation, I hope it's lovely and mild and not raining and not too hot. And who knows, maybe it's the daytime as you're listening to this, if you're not listening live. And it's sunny and warm and cozy and whatever else. And before I continue, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe to our Behind the Steel Curtain YouTube channel, where we bring you live shows each and every day and night of the week, including this show, the Touchdown Under Show, which you saw earlier today, you listened to earlier today with Maddie Peverall and Mark Davison. We have what Ian's talking about. I'm sorry, that's an audio. We have We Run the North with Kevin Tate. We have Bad Language with Brian Anthony Davis. We have The Hangover with Brian and Shannon and yours truly. We have the Scobro Show with Dave and Rich. We have Know Your Enemy or The Curtain Call, depending on the time of year, and that's with Jeffrey Benedict and Shannon White. And we have Steelers Preview with Dave Schofield, Jeff Hartman, and Brian Anthony Davis. And I think it's all of our live shows. I think I got them all. Usually I miss one, but I think I got them all. And, of course, you can catch all those live shows also on Facebook Live. And you can catch all those shows after the fact on any audio platform of your choosing. Wherever you can find podcasts, you can find our Behind the Steel Curtain podcast family. And we also have a whole host of audio-only shows, including Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, Steelers Fix with Jeremy Betts and Andrew Wilbar. We have From the Cutting Room Floor with Jeffrey Benedict. We have The Stat Geek with Dave Schofield. We have What He's Talking About with Kyle Kreis. We have The War Room with Maddie Peverall. We have even more shows for you on it. We have just so many shows for you, and with the season fast approaching, we're going to be hitting the coverage fast and hard and heavy. So please check out our audio only platform, again, on any place where you can find podcasts. And of course, check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. We're bringing you news, commentary, film breakdown. It's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And let's welcome people into the live chat. Let's see who we have here. I think Kathy Ford was in first, and she says, hello, Tony. Hey, Tony. Jared Devil finished second. Steeler Chick 46. George Teston's in here. I saw him somewhere. Just Me's here. I haven't seen Just Me in a while. Just Me is with us. And Jorge Rico is with us. And he says, I'm still calling it Heinz Field, hence the name of the podcast tonight. Reginald Rivers, who says, what's up, Steel Nation from Bartlett, Tennessee. Mario's with us. And we have a nice crew tonight. So before I get to the topic, I have our six-pack of questions, and Greg Morris is joining us as I say that from Facebook. And I'll give you the first four, and they come to you via Jeff Hartman, the editor behind the Steel Curtain. And these are 6 questions that we will go over after I'm done with my topics. In addition to answering your usual comments and questions, we'll go over these questions and see what your answers are. And number 1 from Jeff is, the Steelers will be reporting to St. Vincent College on July 26th for training camp. If you were to guess one player who will have a big entrance, who would it be? And boy, I hope it happens, because I know, and this is just my opinion, but I know it's going to cause a huge hoopla, a lot of outrage in today's world of where everybody's always outraged. I can't wait. So anyway, that's question number 1. Question number 2 is a follow-up to question number 1. What would that grand entrance be? Would it be a James Harrison on a fire truck type entrance, Brett Kiesel on a tractor, Antonio Brown in a helicopter? And you can see the evolution. When Harrison and Kiesel did their thing, that was like, it was funny. by the time we got to the helicopter with Antonio Brown, it was outrage. So that's question number 2. Question number 3. TJ Watt got hitched this past week and he got married to his longtime girlfriend. The teammates, both current and former, who were in attendance, made me think it had to be a tough call as to who got the invite and who didn't. How would you go about making that tough call on who got invited and who didn't? Pretty interesting question. And question number 4 from Jeff. And this is a doozy. What were your overall thoughts of the new name of the Steelers Stadium, Acrisure Stadium? And those are his 4. And I will give you question number 5. What would you have called it instead of Acrisure Stadium? That's my question. And question number 6, and this is another easy one, because I always go easy. What's your favorite sport and favorite team of that sport besides football, besides the NFL? What's your favorite sport and team that plays that sport? So those are the 6 questions that you can ponder, you can go over later on in the show. But until then, I'm going to go over my topics for tonight's show. And topic number 1, and that's the big news of the week, and that was the Steelers announced. I guess people say, it was the name of that company that does all. I should have looked this up. Dave Schofield probably knows it. The name of the company that oversees the Heinz Field and PNC Park, and that authority, whatever it's called. They announced that that Heinz Field will be now called Acrisure Stadium, and of course, this caused a big uproar. I think we were all preparing for a name change, if you can use that word for such a thing, as far back as last year when it was known that the rights to the stadium, the naming rights, would be up after the 2021 season. There was a decent chance that the name would be changed, that a new sponsor would be on the face of the stadium. But I think most people assumed it would be a Pittsburgh company, UPMC, Iron City, Primanti Brothers, Dick's, you name it, something more civic, like Rooney Field or the new Three Rivers or whatever, the Confluence. But we were all caught off guard by the name Acrisure Stadium. Nobody knew what that was or what the company did or what it represented. So it's a company based in Michigan, some kind of tech firm, insurance company. I don't know. But that's the new name of the stadium, Acrisure Stadium. So that's what it's going to be named for the next 15 years, because that's the agreement between the company and the people who will be receiving the money, the Steelers and that other company that oversees the stadium. The name that I can't think of. Maybe you guys can put it in the what's it called? In the comment section. All right, so the name has been changed, and we've had 5 days to discuss it, and so many people out there already vowing never to call it anything but Heinz Field. It would always be Heinz Field to me, they say, and T-shirts have been made. I'm sure there's a meme out there somewhere. I'm sure there's a bumper sticker already out there. I'm sure they have a lot of memorabilia down in Station Square already. It's always going to be Heinz Field. Okay, fine. But the official name is Acrisure Stadium. That's what they're going to call it during every broadcast. That's what they're going to call it whenever they introduce the Steelers before every game. It's going to be Acrisure Stadium. And why? Because Acrisure Stadium will be paying them $150 million, $10 million a year between now and the end of the agreement, 15 years from now. That's why, and people are wondering, why couldn't they name it Rooney Field? And why couldn't they name it UPMC Stadium? Or why could they name it the Iron City Bowl? Because none of those, or why couldn't they rename it Heinz Field or keep the name Heinz Field? Because none of those sponsors stepped up to pay $150 million. Heinz Field, when it won the rights in 2001, it paid $57 million. Get it, Heinz, 57 million, which is roughly $3 million a year, give or take. So evidently, they did not want to pay anywhere near what Acrisure decided to pony up for the new naming rights. So that's why it was changed. And UPMC didn't want to pay that, apparently. Nobody else wanted to pay that kind of money. Acrisure did. And that's why they are now the proud owners of the name of the Steelers and the Pitt Panthers football venue. And Art Rooney said as much the other day in the introductory press conference. He said, they had, this was the best deal for us. This was the best deal. Thomas Tall, one of the minority owners, he helped broker the deal. He has a relationship with this company. And as far as everybody's concerned, everybody who negotiated this deal, this is going to help the Steelers and I assume the Panthers be more competitive, and that's the bottom line when it comes to something like this. It's not about nostalgia. It's not about sentimentality. It's about doing something that makes your football team more competitive. And that's what all these owners care about. You could talk about doing the quote unquote right thing, but really when they named it Heinz Field 21 years ago, they did that because Heinz Field gave them the best deal. And yes, Heinz Field is a Pittsburgh-based company, not as much now as it was back then, but it's still closely tied to Pittsburgh. And, I get why people care about that kind of thing, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for your football team, and you have to give your football team the best chance to succeed, and that's what they did with this deal. They're all pretty excited about this, helping them be more competitive, so let's see what happens. In the meantime, all we have to do is get used to calling it Acrisure Stadium and not Heinz Field. But if you want to call it Heinz Field, that's okay too. It's a free country, and you won't get in trouble. They still have to call it Acrisure Stadium, though. So you can't fault them for putting that up for changing the name, because that's what they're being paid to do. It could be worse. They could change the name of the team. They could change the uniforms to a completely different color scheme, like red and orange or something. They could move to Washington County, which they threatened to do in the mid-'90s if they didn't get a new stadium. So, there's lots of things that could have happened that are a lot worse than changing the name of a stadium. We're all going to get used to it. This is all going to be ancient history, and probably, I'd give it a couple of months. The way news is cycled through now, the news cycle is so fast and furious in 2022. We'll all be mad about something else by Tuesday, and by September, when the season starts, we'll have forgotten about the name of the old name of the stadium. I think part of the problem with this is I don't think, and I said this on Monday on the Hangover with Brian, we're just not used to this kind of thing in Pittsburgh, because the names of the sporting venues for years were civically named. Forbes Field, Three River Stadium, the Civic Arena, but then other than but then Mellon Arena, or I'm sorry, Civic Arena was renamed Mellon Arena, years ago. And then, of course, Three River Stadium was torn down, and in its place were Heinz Field and PNC Park, and that was the name of those two venues from day one. So I think people kind of, maybe forgot that, hey, these are sponsors. This isn't some civic name. These are sponsors. These are sponsors paying both the Pirates and the Steelers a lump sum of money to call those venues PNC Park and Heinz Field. So I think people forgot about that. So when you hear, you've known it as Heinz Field for so long that it feels civic. It feels like a civic thing to you, but it's really not. Heinz Field, or I'm sorry, Kraft Heinz, the company, from what I understand, is like made twice as much money last year as Acrisure Stadium, or I'm sure Acrisure, whatever, insurance. And yet they didn't want to pony up nearly as much money. So I think what this amounts to is Heinz knowing that, hey, look, we're Heinz. Everybody knows who we are. And we're not going to pay that kind of money for naming rights anymore. Acrisure is like, nobody knows who we are. So this is a good way to become more of a national brand. So I think that's what you had here. You had Heinz saying, we don't need to pay you, and we don't really need you. Everybody knows who we are. And Acrisure needing to make a name for themselves, and they partnered up with the Steelers and with Heinz Field and with the Panthers to do that. So this is the new norm for sports venues in the 2000s and in the 21st century. This has been a thing now for 2 decades, and it's not going to change anytime soon. And I appear to be frozen. Anyway, I'm sure you can still hear me, even though I'm frozen. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Bear with me. Sorry, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I seem to have I froze there for a few seconds, so I apologize for that. So anyway, I thought because of my technical difficulties, but I was talking about the name change, and this is something that, if it would have happened 15, 20 years ago, there'd be a small uproar over it, and then it would go away. But, like when Steely McBeam was introduced, 15, 16 years ago, people were appalled that this was what the team mascot looked like. And, they expressed their thoughts, but it kind of went away. It died down, But if Steely McBeam was introduced today as a new team mascot, there'd be like 50 million comments about it, and 20 million jokes, and 40 gazillion retweets and memes, and they devote entire radio segments to it, and there'd be articles written about it, and blogs and podcasts devoted to it. So that's just kind of what you have with this name change is years ago, the outrage was more localized when it came to something like a name change of a venue. Now it's worldwide, and like we're bombarded by it, and it's amplified, and it's all at once, and it's really, really pronounced for a few days or a week, and then it dies down, which I expect this to happen. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the stadium name change. It's really not that big of a deal. In the long run, it's going to be something that we're all going to be used to. And in the long run, it should help the Steelers remain competitive or be more competitive. How, I don't know. I guess with renovations, maybe. So let's be honest. That stadium's 21 years old now, and I think it's a perfectly fine stadium. But the NFL sports owners are all about keeping up with the Joneses, and they always feel like they have to do whatever they can to create more or better revenue streams. And speaking of which, the Jerry Dome or Jerry World, whatever it's called, that's 10 years younger than Heinz Field, and the amenities are 20 times better. So, like I mentioned months ago, don't be surprised if in a few years they're looking to move on from Acrisure Stadium, and they're going to want to build a new one, and that'll be a whole new struggle for the city and the fans and the citizens and the team. So be prepared for that. A name change down the road might seem like nothing when it comes to that. So that's all I had to say about that. The second thing I wanted to talk about has to do with the quarterback competition in training camp. And we all know it's supposed to be a three-way competition. Most people think it's a two-way competition, but regardless of how it shakes out, this is going to be one of the first preseasons in a long time where the eventual starting quarterback is going to get plenty of reps in the preseason, whether it's Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, or long shot Mason Rudolph. The new starting quarterback when the season starts, he's not going to be dealing with rust. That was always a concern with Ben Roethlisberger, because really starting in 2015, he barely played in the preseason. There were games where Landry Jones and whoever else would start and play the entire game, and Ben wouldn't see any action at all. All the action he did see starting in 2015 through last year, a couple of series, maybe a half a quarter, and that was it. And it really didn't seem to bother him. I know it bothered the fans and it bothered the media, but you have to protect your most precious resource, and that's the quarterback, when you have a great one. And they did for the better part of those 6-7 years. So there was no need for Roethlisberger to play in the preseason or play a lot. But this year, they need to see what their next starting quarterback looks like in the preseason. They need to see as much as they can from all three of these guys. So I expect Mitch Trubisky to start all three games. I really do. I expect him to start all three games and play at least a quarter in each, maybe a quarter in the first game, a half in the dress rehearsal game, now game number 2, and a quarter in the third game. And I expect Pickett to play at least a quarter in all three games, and same with Rudolph. I expect all three of those guys to get significant time, and you can't worry about injury. You can't worry about fatigue or anything like that. You have to find out what you have and whether or not this guy is going to be ready for the start of the season. So it's kind of a shame to say it, I guess, but you can't really worry about whether or not these guys get hurt, because until they prove otherwise, they're not precious commodities just yet. So my gut is telling me, and this is before training camp even starts. I mean, that can change rather quickly, but my gut tells me that it's probably going to be Trubisky that winds up winning the job. How long he holds on to the job will be determined by, obviously, the overall performance of the team, but specifically him. If things are going well, if they're 6-2 after 8 games or whatever, then he'll probably keep the job. But if they're floundering on offense, or if they're below 500, then I can certainly see a scenario where Kenny Pickett, even if he's not playing lights out, if he didn't play lights out in the preseason, I could see a scenario where he becomes the starter, because then you're moving on to the future. By that point, you may have felt like, if you're the Steelers, you may feel like you know everything there is to know about Mitch Trubisky, and now you want to find out about the guy you drafted in the first round, and you want to get him as many live reps as you can, as much experience as you can during his rookie year, and hopefully, if you're for the Steelers' sake, you hope that he keeps you competitive and that he keeps you in the hunt until the end of the year. So my gut tells me it's going to be Trubisky that wins the job, but certainly wouldn't shock me if Kenny Pickett somehow started the year as the number 1 guy. Mason Rudolph, like I always say, he's the wild card. You just don't know. But those are my thoughts on that. I don't anticipate anybody getting preferential treatment when I say that, I mean getting protected this preseason. I think Mike Tomlin's gonna throw caution to the wind with these guys and see what he has in all 3 of his core. Even Oladokin, he might get some time, but specifically his top 3 quarterbacks, he's gonna throw them all out there and maybe even mix and match. I said earlier, Trubisky he's probably going to start all 3. He should start all 3 games. Maybe he starts games 1 and 2, but maybe Pickett starts game 3, but Trubisky comes in and plays them in the second quarter or the second half even. I don't know. It's a whole new world. It's something that we're not used to, and we haven't had to worry about for 2 decades, close to 2 decades anyway. So it's going to be an interesting camp in that regard, and certainly an interesting preseason. So those are my thoughts on that. And one more thing I wanted to talk about is the Penguins development and how and I'm going to try to relate it to the Steelers because I think it reminds me an awful lot of how they operated the last few years. And that's the news. Actually, it came in I guess about a week apart, maybe a few days apart. The Penguins agreed to a deal to retain Chris Letang, their famed defenseman. And then just the other day, they surprised everybody by agreeing to a new deal with Geno Malkin. Those two, along with Sidney Crosby, that means that the core of their last 3 Stanley Cup championships is still intact. But all these guys are in their mid-30s now, and by the time their current contracts run out, they're all going to be pushing 40 or over 40. So I think it surprised people that they kept all 3. I think most experts and fans were expecting them to move on from at least one of those guys, if not 2. With Sid being the lone main, obviously one of the best players, the second best player in franchise history, with him being the lone leftover. But they kept all 3, and it kind of reminds me of what the Steelers did with Ben over his last few years. There were people who wanted them to move on from him, that he was getting too old to be effective, and you can certainly see that over his last couple of years or so. But at the same time, were there better options out there at quarterback for them to be a competitive team in 2020 and 2021? And to me, you'd be hard pressed to find realistic options that were better than Ben Roethlisberger. as far as keeping Pittsburgh competitive. And I think you could say the same thing about the Penguins and their core. Are they going to win a Stanley Cup with these three guys now? At this point, they're all again in their mid-30s. Probably not. They've gone out in the first round of the playoffs for 4 straight years. They won the cup in 16 and 17, and then they lost in the second round in 2018 the second round in 2018, and then the last 4 years they've gone out in the first round. So it looks like their run is over. However, are there better options out there for them to remain competitive? Say they got rid of Malkin and Letang, and they brought in maybe some younger players to play along Sid, because they're not going to get rid of Sid at this point. He's still, even though he's going to be 35 next month, he's still one of the best players in the NHL, and he's playing, as well as just about anybody in the NHL overall. He's probably not the best player anymore, but he's certainly playing at a high level for his age. So they, say they kept him around and surrounded him with other younger talent. Would it be enough to win? And probably not. This core, even though it's unlikely that they're going to win another cup with this core at this point of their careers, it's still their best chance to be competitive. And I think that was the same way with Steelers and Ben. And you can see why both franchises have operated the way that they have, because once you've given the fans a taste of a championship or multiple championships, and then you have all the sellouts and I think the Penguins sellout streak ended last season at some point, but it's still they have a huge following, they have great ratings, and to go from that to starting over, it's a hard thing to do when you've already tasted that success. It's one thing to get close and fail and get close and fail, and then, all right, that's it. We have to blow the thing up and start over. But once you saw that with the Steelers a lot in the 90s, they got close for 6 years, but they could never get over the top. And then it was time to move on. And they had to kind of reload their roster. And by the early 2000s, they were ready to compete again. Yeah, there were some lean years there. We've seen that in the past with the Penguins. After the Mario years, in the mid to late 80s into the early 90s, into the mid 90s, when they were still really, really competitive, once they kind of jumped the shark, so to speak, and Mario finally, although he never really retired until he kept retiring and coming back, he was still playing when Sid was there early on. But it was certainly there were certainly some lean times after they decided to rebuild in the early 2000s. But once you get back up on top and once you start winning again, like both these teams did recently, it's hard to move on from that. And you want to keep that, the people most responsible for that success, you want to keep them around, and the fans demand that you keep them around because they've experienced so much. These players have given these fans so many great memories. It's hard for them to move on. So, you're trying to remain competitive. You're also trying to put out the most popular product that you can. It's going to continue to keep the fans coming to the arena, to the stadium. It's going to keep the fans continuing to tune in. So you can kind of see the parallels there. Again, the chances of winning again with this core, whether it's the Penguins or with Ben and a couple other people that he had around him, the chances of winning, once they get to a certain point of their careers, the chances are pretty slim. But it's still your best chance. And I think that's what we're seeing with the Penguins in this decision to sign these veterans and keep them together. So I just thought that was pretty interesting because I'm not much of a hockey fan, so I can kind of look at things more objectively when talking about them. And it's clear to anybody who's followed sports for any length of time that it's a young man's business. And by and large, the teams that win championships are collectively younger on the younger side. And once you get to a certain point, those teams kind of die off and are replaced by fresher, younger teams, and they dominate for a while. So I can kind of look objectively at the Penguins and see that they're going through what the Steelers just went through, but I can also see why it's hard for them to let go of their core and move on and start over. So those are all of my topics for the night, and now I will take some time and answer your six-pack questions or any other questions and comments that you may have. All right. This is from Greg. Sorry, I'm lapsing tonight. And Greg Morris from Facebook, and he says, it doesn't matter what the name is of the stadium. Tomlin needs to prepare his team much better to play on the field. Well, it's always going to be a criticism of any head coach when you don't win. Fans often view it as a matter of preparation and not simply a matter of talent, which I think that's been the main problem over the last decade or so. Is the Steelers have been on the other end of the championship cycle, but to their credit, they've managed to remain somewhat competitive in the meantime. Ron Schultz says keeping the scoreboard will make this kerfuffle go away. Maybe. Kathy Ford says, I always like Three Rivers, not a great fan of corporate sponsorship, although I understand it. Worst thing is trying to get tickets. Yeah, well, that's a big problem if you're a longtime Steeler fan, because they've been selling out every year of my entire life, 50 years. And Steelers Freak, as I alluded to earlier in the show, says they will have a new stadium before the 15-year contract is up. Got to keep up with the Joneses. And really, that's literally when you're talking about Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, people like that. You look at the Charger Stadium. The Georgia Dome was just torn down after opening in 1996. Within the last 5 years, there's a new dome stadium in Atlanta. So the Braves, they've played in three different stadiums, I think. Yeah, 3 different stadiums since the 90s. They went from Fulton County to another one and just to another one. Fairly recently, they opened up a new one. I mean, these stadiums, in ballparks, they go fast. It really creeps up on you. People think it still feels like I almost said it. Acrisure Stadium just opened, and meanwhile it's 21 years old. Same with PNC Park. But by the time Three River Stadium was that old in 1991, the mayor was calling for a new baseball only and a new football only venue. So yeah, these venues don't last. I mean, a house lasts 100 years, but a sports venue seems to be antiquated after a couple of decades. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I think PNC Park's safe because baseball stadiums, I guess they can last a little bit longer, but these football stadiums with the luxury suites and there's so many different revenue streams and they usually don't seem to stand up to the test of time, and they have to be torn down and replaced within 2 or 3 decades. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Randall Jordan from Facebook says, It's all about the money. That's why advertisers have to have their name on everything in sports. That's right. I mean, that's why you can't, when people talk about Heinz ketchup like it's like some local treasure, it's still a Fortune 500 company worth billions. And, when they won the rights in 2001, that was a business decision. Dan Rooney or whoever was in charge of brokering that deal, they didn't reach that deal out of the goodness of their hearts. They did it because they were the highest bidder. And some people from a while ago informed me that I was frozen. Yes, that was a very difficult time in my life 20 minutes ago. Brian Brown says of Acrisure Stadium, field goals are hard for opponents, makes it a great stadium. Yeah, well, not as hard as it used to be. Oh boy, it took a good decade or so for all kickers, home and visitors, to get used to Heinz Field. But I think they seem to have figured it out. I think the improvement in the quality of the turf has helped a lot too. I think that's helped a lot with making field goals a lot easier I almost said it again, Acrisure Stadium. Jerry Cherry Band, who brings us our great musical content. What a talented cat that guy is. And he says, don't like the Cowboys, but I'm a fan of the owner's name. Yeah. I can see why, Jerry. Your name is Cherry Jones, I think, right? No, I'm just kidding. Jerry Cherry. All right. Let's see what else here. This is from State of the Steelers. Tony, do you see the Steelers having a package for Kenny Pickett? No, I don't. Because the reason why I say that is because I don't think his skill set, as far as, when you say package, I think of something, like an RPO kind of a thing. His skill set, as far as being able to run and mobility, I don't see that being any different than what Mitch Trubisky can provide. So it wouldn't be much of a change of pace. It wouldn't be anything crazy for the defense to have to prepare for. So no, I don't see anything as far as Kenny Pickett getting a role in games like Cordell used to do, or what's the guy's name with the Saints? I can't think of it. It's the offseason. The guy who signed the huge I still don't know what the hype is about that guy with the Saints. That the guy that was always Drew Brees' change up. What's his name? Yeah, I don't see that with Kenny Pickett. No, but that is a good question. What I see is all or nothing for whoever wins the starting quarterback job. And this is from Claude Bishop. Mitch will win the job and keep it for this season unless an injury sidelines him. An injury or poor play. I mean, if Mitch is not getting the job done, if the offense is floundering, if the team is floundering, if Mike Tomlin feels like a change of pace, a different arm, a different quarterback could spark the offense, then he's going to make a change. But if Mitch is, if he finds his footing as a starting quarterback again in the NFL, then this could be a red shirt year for Kenny Pickett. I think the team's going to have to remain competitive all year for that to happen, because I think they want to get Pickett in there by no later than year 2. I think it'd be foolish to keep your number 1 draft pick quarterback on the bench for 2 years, because you have 5 years with him, but you need to find out about him probably by his 3rd year. So for them, that would be year 4 of his contract. And then at that point, they can decide where they go with him moving forward. Is he the guy for them for the future? Brian Brown says, I think if the Steelers can stay healthy, this team can really go far. Well, certainly if the defense can remain healthy. That front seven, if the defensive line, I think we all know what they have in Cam and TJ and Minka. They're the three big guys, but obviously they need contributions from Alualu and now Ogunjobi and of course Alex Highsmith, Devin Bush needs to step it up. They have Miles Jack, which could turn out to be a great pickup for them, and Levi Wallace and maybe Akilo Witherspoon can turn into a really fine young cornerback. So yeah, certainly the defense can give them a chance to if it's close to 2019 or pre-injury 2020, then this defense can keep them competitive. Now, like I said before, if the quarterback play and the offensive line play really improves, then this team can do something. What? I don't know, but maybe better than 7.5 wins, which is what they're predicting in Vegas. And this is a different opinion from just me. And she says, no, Pickett's going on full force, meaning Pickett is going to be the starter from day one. And wouldn't that be exciting? All right. And Steelers Freak points out something very important. It's actually 6 years, but the Steelers have gone 7 years, he says, without winning a playoff game. This is a new lean era. Well, I mean, that's kind of, it's kind of interesting how similar this past decade was to what was going on in the 80s into the early 90s with Chuck Noll. I mean, they were fairly competitive through the mid 80s, and then they really fell off into the early 90s. From the mid 80s through the early 90s, they only made the playoffs once. They only won one playoff game. And with the last decade, they kind of fell off right after that Super Bowl run. They missed the playoffs for a couple of years, but then they got it back together again, and they were fairly competitive up through 2017 into 2018, and then they still made the playoffs. I hate to say it's not an exact perfect comparison because they did make the playoffs more, but they weren't competitive in the playoffs. And that's something that has to change in the near future. And Daniel J. from another one from Facebook asked, how much of a leash does Mitch have? Well, I think, as we've said so far, I think he has a leash that's long enough, provided he plays well. Now, if he's playing lights out and the team's struggling, he's still going to stay in there. If the team's failing to, maybe not producing on defense or whatever, then he's going to stay in it. So his leash is, I don't see Tomlin yanking him out after one game, obviously. I think if he's struggling, say he struggles out of the gate, I'd give him a month. So that's about, I give him 4 games if he's struggling from day one. And these are some of the 6-pack questions from Steeler Chick 46. Answer to Tony's 1 and 2, the first and second question. Chris Boswell showing up in a Brinks money truck. Well, that would be something. That would certainly cause a stir. All right. What else we have here? And Kathy Ford says, I love this one. Claypool arrives by parachute. Wouldn't that make people angry? That would be so good. I'd love it, provided he doesn't get hurt. And of course, if he parachutes in, there's only one thing that would suck. All right. Brian Brown asks, Tony, do you think the Steelers will lead the NFL in sacks again? I think there's a pretty good chance they record 50 plus again. I don't know, but it's hard to say if they can lead the NFL. If they stay healthy, I mean, you look what they did as a compromised unit in a lot of ways last year. If Ogunjobi can provide the kind of pressure he did last year, if say he can stay healthy. Obviously, Cam Hayward, we know what he can do, and if Highsmith can step it up, then look out. Patricia Castanda asks, who do you think will be the backup running back? Benny Snell Jr. All right, it is now 9:51. Wow. Anyway, it's 9:51, and it's time to call it a night. It was fun talking to you guys tonight. I'm gonna go have some dinner, I guess. I was gonna maybe do karaoke, but it's too late for me. I'm 50. I'll probably maybe another night. But instead, I'm probably just gonna go to sleep. Until I talk to you on Monday on the Hangover with I think Kyle Kreis will be joining us, and me and Shannon filling in for Brian. You guys have a great weekend. Please keep checking back to Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. Keep checking out our podcast. Training camp is 11 days away, so we're going to have great coverage for you. You're not going to be disappointed. But you have a great weekend, and as always, go Steelers. Goodbye, everybody.